And big doings here in week 2 of the year where we got the football games being played this weekend, press conferences being held earlier this week, and this guy was up late in Tampa having his Crimson Tide heartbroken late into the night, calling the games for the Crimson Tide radio network, but you know him and love him as one of the architects of our Super Bowl 35 championship here in Baltimore, as a longtime scouting director here and then in Cleveland, and now the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, and he still owes me some dark chocolate peanut butter cups. We welcome Phil Savage back onto the program. Phil, how you been, man? I know this has been a rough week all over Alabama that's not called Auburn, right?
Yeah, Nestor, a belated Happy New Year to you, and certainly a difficult ending for Alabama that was trying to go from beginning to end as the number one team in the country. They did it for 14 games, 59 minutes, and 59 seconds, and just could not close the deal against really an exceptional Clemson team. When you go back to last year, their heartbreak in the championship game, to come back, respond the way they did, and then, of course, they were down 10 points on two different occasions in the second half, and they rally for the win. So the silver lining to it, I suppose, and probably somewhat of a healing balm, so to speak, for the Bama Nation, is the fact that it was one of our own, Dabo Swinney, who's a former Bama player and former coach there at the Capstone, was the one who got a chance to hoist that trophy on Monday night. So Bama will go back to work. They've already been installed as a favorite for next year by Las Vegas. They'll lose some players, but the expectations never change there. As long as Nick Saban and the process are in place, they're always going to be in the mix.
Phil, I mean, that game was broken down 3 ways from Sunday, all night Monday, and all day Tuesday. The big thing for me, with you standing in the middle of this, is what did Deshaun Watson do to his draft stock by winning that game? You know, there wouldn't have been any harm in losing it, though, right? I mean, I think it's a national championship game. The kid's a special kid. He's clearly a well put together kid, and the kind of kid you want to have on your team if you're an NFL executive. And I know you were, and you talk to NFL executives every day. Where's Deshaun Watson in all this? Because no one you couldn't do more to help your stock, but that doesn't mean that you're going to you're going to win a Super Bowl down the line, or that you're a great pro prospect, right?
Yeah, I think he's going to be a fascinating study for the teams as they really try to decide, is he worth taking the gamble on? He's been in a spread offense, as most of these college quarterbacks are in now, but he's been a big-time winner in high school and college. I thought the thing that impressed me the most about him Monday night was the fact that he got hit, and I mean he got really hit a number of times, and he actually played his best football at the very end when they needed him the most. His leadership is understated, but it works amongst his peers. I've had some NFL scouts shrug their shoulders and shake their heads that they're not a fan. I've had other NFL people say, I think this guy's got a chance if he can get in the right circumstance, which is the case of all the quarterbacks in reality as they make the jump from college to pro. Nestor, he's a graduate, so he's eligible for our game here. The Browns are one of the coaching staffs, the Bears are the other, the first and third picks in the draft. The offer's on the table. We're waiting to hear back from him and several other Clemson players that participated Monday night to see if he'll do it. But I think if he put himself in this venue, he could certainly set the narrative in a positive direction for himself in advance of the combine, in advance of the pro days, in advance of the actual draft itself. And, it would separate him from other guys that are not eligible to practice and play here. So we're very hopeful that he'll decide to represent Clemson here in Mobile.
Phil Savage joining us here. You can follow his journey at Senior Bowl, Phil, and he'll be doing the Reese's Senior Bowl. Phil, I can't believe you got 10 minutes to talk to me on the back end of this thing here with all you've been going through with Alabama. These are the busiest days and weeks leading up to your event down in Mobile. Tell me how it's shaping up. I know you love to talk about it. I'm not coming down this year. I'm going to be in Houston. I've just been on the road too much this year, Phil. And with my wife getting better, but I did love the experience coming down there, and I plan to get there again. Just couldn't make time for it this year.
Yeah, of course, 2 weeks from now, we'll be in the midst of the practices for the 110 players that ultimately will find their way to Mobile. I think we've got 104 accepted invites right now. As I mentioned, Deshaun Watson, a couple Clemson players, several Alabama players that will let us know hopefully by the end of the week. But the coverage this year will be on the NFL Network and ESPN during the week for the practices themselves on Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Then, of course, game day, Saturday, January 28th. That'll all be handled by the NFL Network. But we're excited about the group of players we've gotten. I mentioned the Bears and the Browns as the two coaching staffs. I think both organizations feel like that this is a real advantage for them as they kick off their off season for 2017. And of course, the thing that I think I'm most proud about in terms of the actual game week is just the fact that we give these players a glimpse of what being an NFL player is going to be all about. And, we give them some media training. We do some financial education with Morgan Stanley Global Sports and Entertainment. They did a fabulous job last year really explaining to the players how money works and some of the do's and don'ts as they make this transition to being a professional athlete. And then, of course, the community service day on Friday, the day before the game, where the players visit our local children's hospitals and a number of elementary schools. I think it's something that we've added, 4.5 years ago that has really worked for the Mobile community.
For you with the invites, are there people you just don't invite because you know they're not coming? I mean, you don't always get the absolute 100. There are plenty of reasons. Agents, kids don't want to come, don't want to play, don't want to get hurt. Same reason they don't show up for the combine at various points as well. But from your experience of doing this through the years, first as the kid sitting there and being a fan, and then being the executive that went down there to be a part of the swap meet down there and get to know some of these kids. But during your tenure, I know you always want to have the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pick of the draft there. That doesn't happen for a lot of different reasons. Is there something you can do to make it more attractive for maybe some of the upper echelon guys who used to skip it for some reason to think that they can improve their stock there?
Yeah, Nestor. I mean, we try to invite the very best players every year, and the expectation is that you're certainly going to not get everybody. Typically, it's usually between 10 and 20 players that either have an injury or something happened in a bowl game, or it's just simply a choice that they don't want to do it. They feel like they've done enough. How we've tried to frame it is that this is not the end or the culmination of your college career, even though the Reese's Senior Bowl is considered an all-star game. This is actually the kickoff. This is the lifting of the curtain, so to speak, of your professional career, because there's no greater job fair in terms of being in front of 32 potential employers than the Reese's Senior Bowl. And here's the reason why. You've got 900 NFL staff members on the ground in Mobile to see 110 players. You'll never have that ratio of staff to potential NFL prospect from here on out the rest of your career, because at the combine it's over 300 players, and once the pro days start, you're talking about 5, 6, 7, 800 players that are available for this draft, and then once the draft comes and goes, you're looking at thousands of players that are on the street as free agents. So to have this kind of stage with this kind of focus is a real rarity for these guys, and that's the way we've tried to couch it for them so that they can make the best decision for themselves.
Well, they only get so many opportunities, right? I mean, all these kids, once the tape stops rolling, and really it's a lot about getting to know people, right? I mean, the thing I've seen down there is seeing these kids study habits, seeing how quickly they pick things up. A lot of guys try to play a different position when they get down there to sort of help their draft stock, maybe to be able to do something they weren't allowed to do in the scheme they were in. There's all of that going on. Who we got for coaches this year, Phil?
Yeah, Nestor, it's the Browns and the Bears. Of course, Hugh Jackson, the head coach of the Browns, they've made some changes over there, so they've got to put a staff together here very quickly to make sure that they can staff the game. And then John Fox and the Bears will have it. Of course, this is decided by the league. They go in draft order and also intact coaching staff. So once the Browns committed, I'm under the assumption that they told the league that hey, we'll have our staff back together again by the time we get to, the third week of January.
Phil, we got football games happening this weekend, and here in Baltimore, we're going to have our noses pressed up to the glass. We're going to be doing the same thing you're doing, watching the games, right? And Steve Bisciotti had a press conference on Tuesday, and obviously the drum beats begin, and he even mentioned a pitchfork. The pitchforks are out was his quote for Ozzie, who I know you're very close with, and John Harbaugh as well, and Steve Bisciotti, who you knew and worked for as well. This is a tough thing when you don't make the playoffs 3 out of 4 years, and you like your general manager, you like your Eric DeCostas and your Joe Ortizes and your George Kokaneses, but the question is how many years can you go not making the playoffs? The Ravens are 3 out of 4 now. I think the heat has been picked up, certainly on Joe Flacco as well, and just all the way around the organization. These are tough times in Baltimore because the bar's so high here.
Yeah, once that Super Bowl, the second one was won in 2012, I think everyone feels like that they have a Super Bowl caliber quarterback in Joe Flacco. But the reality is that, he's not a guy that's going to carry the team like a Tom Brady or an Aaron Rodgers. He's not really made that way. He's a very talented player, very good player, but he needs help around him. And I thought the Ravens, and I think the Ravens going forward, will really try to become a better running team. I think when they've struggled, it's been primarily because they've become one-dimensional as a throwing team. With a set of receivers that has not always been that consistent. So, I think once they've done their review and they go through every player from stem to stern, then they'll come up with a plan for the off season like they've done really for the last 20 years. In my mind, if people are talking about pitchforks, they probably ought to have some rubber tips on those pitchforks because sometimes you get what you wish for, and what Ravens fans may wish for will be a step back from what they've enjoyed over the last 20 years, in my opinion.
Phil, for the weekend, we've got the, these are all the successful teams, right? The grade 8, 7 of them are really going to get their feelings hurt here over the next 3 weeks. There's only one of them that's ever really going to feel good about themselves. Where do you handicap this thing in anyone beating Bill Belichick and Tom Brady in this tournament?
Yeah, I think that's the case. I think when you look at the AFC, to me, it's probably the Steelers and the Patriots. In the NFC, it sounds like, or it looks to me like it's most likely going to be the Cowboys and the Packers. The Falcons and the Seahawks play this weekend, so one of them obviously is going to be in the final. But nevertheless, I think the quarterback injuries really threw a curveball into the playoff scenario. It was obviously a huge disappointment for the Raiders to lose Derek Carr going in to the playoffs with Miami and Ryan Tannehill. Not to say that Matt Moore didn't do a good job, but I think that really changed the complexion of what their hopes were going into the postseason. But yeah, those are the teams. But again, it certainly feels and seems and looks like that New England will make another appearance in the Super Bowl, but I do think Pittsburgh will have something to say about that.
All right, NFC, I know they're all worked up down there in Dallas about the Star going south on I-45 down to Houston for Super Bowl 51. Rookie quarterback, rookie running back. Phil, did you even think this was possible?
Well, I think you have to give the Cowboys a lot of credit in terms of their idea was to draft Ezekiel Elliott thinking that he would protect the quarterback in conjunction with the offensive line, would take some pressure off the quarterback position and then help their defense. It's worked like a charm. The difference is that they thought it was going to be Tony Romo last April when they took Ezekiel Elliott. It ended up being Dak Prescott. So Dak Prescott found himself in a perfect situation. He absolutely has delivered on his end of the bargain. And the Cowboys, because they're so efficient offensively, really put a lot of pressure on their opponent. And so with that being said, I'm not surprised because of the way that their team is constructed and the way that they're built. And, that goes back to the Deshaun Watson question. I mean, at this point last year, I think everybody would agree that Deshaun Watson would be a higher-rated prospect than Dak Prescott. Can Watson get to a team like the Cowboys and administrate it like Dak could? I would say that he could. But if he ends up going to a bad team that's got a poor offensive line and, they're having a rebuild on the defensive ball and it all falls on the quarterback, then, he won't have the kind of success that Prescott had, although, he appears to be a better player. So, a lot can change over and has changed over these last 9 or 10 months. But I think you've got to give, everybody's always quick to criticize the Cowboys because of Jerry Jones and just the polarizing figure that he is. But I think in this case, you've got to give them a lot of credit for what they thought was best for their team when they took Elliott.
Two things for you, Phil. We've talked a lot about these teams all week long. Nobody likes Atlanta. Nobody likes Kansas City, right? I mean, here are the teams that have done all those things to get a bye, to take a week off, to play home games here. I haven't found anybody that thinks that Kansas City's going to beat Pittsburgh this week, let alone have a chance to be in Houston. But all these two franchises have done is won football games all year long.
Yeah, I think Kansas City, definitely is a formidable team. I think when you go back, remember Pittsburgh lost earlier in the season to Philadelphia. They were led by an Andy Reid disciple and Doug Peterson with a rookie quarterback in Carson Wentz. They found some success against the Steelers, and that was a long time ago. And so, we'll see if Alex Smith can deliver in the playoffs. They certainly had a significant loss with Derek Johnson going down to the Achilles a few weeks ago. And then with Atlanta, I think Atlanta at home against the Seahawks, it gives them a really good chance. I think if they were going on the road, you'd have to favor the Seahawks significantly. But at home, inside the dome, they're well rested. Julio Jones had another spectacular season. And I think the key for Atlanta is can they run the ball, can they protect the passer? To me, Matt Ryan's a very good player when he has protection. He's a little bit like Joe Flacco. He can't do it all by himself, but he can be very good when the things around him are in a better position.
Phil, rest up down there in Mobile. I mean, you've had a busy little run here. In the next couple of weeks, you're going to be great. I will be watching from here. And, dark chocolate for me. Always remember that now. I couldn't find any. Last time I was down there, all those milk chocolate. I need dark chocolate peanut butter cups is what I'm looking for Reese's, all right?
We can get that done for you, Nestor. I'm sorry you're not going to make it down this year. I'm actually headed up to ESPN tonight. I got 2 days of insiders coming up, so I've got to take the Bama hat off, put on the ESPN hat, and then I'll get back Friday night, and we'll really drill down into this Reese's Senior Bowl. But we've done a lot of legwork, a lot of logistics already in place, so we should be set and ready to go here over the next week or so.
Well, I know it's a big hootenanny down there, and just to keep the record straight, the Mardi Gras was invented or began in Mobile. But C.J. Mosley always points that out to me every time we get together.
Yeah, it's the mother of Mardi Gras. Of course, this year it does not overlap with our game, which on one hand is a little bit disappointing, but on another, from a logistical standpoint, it certainly is a lot easier for people to get around the city and to get our players and coaches to and from everywhere without having to deal with the Mardi Gras crowds.
Well, you got a beautiful town down there. Don't let anybody come down there and wreck all that beautiful blue water and white sand. Phil, we'll take care, and we'll hope to see you down in Houston at the Super Bowl in a couple weeks, man. Great having you on, as always.
Nestor.
And we'll be watching on ESPN as well. You got it, man. And listening on Sirius XM as well. He is Senior Bowl Phil, out on Twitter as well, as out everywhere. Reese's Senior Bowl stuff is served. You'll see a lot of Phil Savage coming up in the next couple of weeks as we get up on Senior Bowl and Super Bowl 51. And, I don't always brag on him as my lifer buddy and architect of Super Bowl 35, but I got to give him his due. He was a huge part of it and has a shiny gold ring to prove it all. You can find me out in the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device. Just download the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear. Morning newspaper ships to your email inbox every morning. It is brought to you by Planet Fitness and PlanetFitness.com. Still $10 a month to get in the best shape of your life here in 2017 and work off some of those Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Last but never least, breaking news happens first on your WNST tech service. That is brought to you by Coons Ford of Security Boulevard. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me anytime, anywhere. You want to know about the London trip or get on the Green Bay or the Nashville interest list for the football trips or just have a quick question. I'm a very available individual. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, and streaming live on our Facebook Live as well as our YouTube WNSTV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never, stop talking. Baltimore Sports.